This is Don't Get Me Started. This is a conversation about advertising. And here is your host, freelance creative director and creative circus department head, Dan Balser.
Yes, welcome back to another episode of the podcast. Thank you for sticking with the show and listening during all this. For a long time, as I've said, I've recorded these constantly and published them every 2 weeks for 14 years. And now I'm sitting at my desk. I'm looking out the window. I'm sitting at the same effing desk that I've been at for a year. And I'm wearing my COVID clothes. I think Joe's noticing I'm wearing like a hoodie and a t-shirt. And I'm basically just dealing with the pandemic. And so much appreciate Joe's doing this with me today. He's in New York, although he's based in LA. And I've done that trip, and it seems simple to fly from LA to New York, but it's kind of exhausting. The other way is a lot easier, but coming this way. So thank you so much for getting up. So listeners, this is Joe Baratelli. As you know, he is Executive Vice President and Chief Creative Officer at RPA in Santa Monica, California. He's been there for 36 years.
Amazing.
Yeah, it's amazing. And I'm going to let him talk a little bit about the agency, but right now the clients include Apartments.com, Honda, Arco, Cedars-Sinai, Farmers Insurance. So you have him to thank or blame for farmers. We are farmers. Jingle. Los Angeles Clippers, Intuit, QuickBooks, Lazy Boy, Southwest Airlines, among others. And before we started recording, I was telling Joe that back when I was a student and beginning my career, Rubin Postar and Associates, which is now RPA, was considered one of the top creative shops. And I think that this agency has never slipped from that mantle. At some point, we'll get through some of these honors and awards, but on this list of honors and awards that I'm holding up to the camera for him to see, the things that stand out to me are among the Cannes Lions and the Emmy Award nomination and One Show Pencils. There are 2 or 3 Effie Awards. And for listeners that don't know, Effie Awards they're the reason we do this business. Those are based on effectiveness, where they do sort of hallmark testing pre and post the campaign. And when you can win creative awards and Effie Awards for the same work, that says a lot about where your priorities and your focus as an agency lies. So, Joe, thank you so much. Welcome to the microphones, the remote conversation. Thank you so much for doing this.
Yeah, well, thank you for having me. This is great. It's an honor, to be honest.
Oh, appreciate that. So tell the listeners who might not be familiar with RPA, I didn't want to just read the summary off of your LinkedIn about it's an independent agency, right? So tell us about you're a resident expert. Tell us a little bit about the culture and the priorities, and sort of tell us a little bit about RPA for people who might not know the agency.
Yeah, well, we're an independent agency. We've been in Santa Monica, or the west side of Los Angeles, for going on 36 years now, I believe. And the story about the agency is pretty interesting. I happened to be there at the time. What happened was there was a big merger, and that was kind of the trend back in the 80s. DDBO, BBD, and Needham Harper, which is the agency I was working for at the time, merged to form Omnicom. And when those mergers happen, there's conflicts of interest between different accounts. And there were a couple of automotive accounts in play here, and Honda was one of them.
So just so listeners know, when you can't have an agency with 2 competing clients. Okay.
Yeah. And that's kind of been, the rule of engagement for a long time. And so what happened was they felt in their wisdom of forming this big conglomerate or holding company that Honda was going to have to be jettisoned from that group. And so Jerry Rubin, the R, and Larry Poster, the P, decided that, or went to the folks and said, hey, what if we bought this office, if you will, or made a deal to take over the office and make it an independent shop. Well, the story goes that they had to go down to Honda and make sure they were comfortable with that before the 100 or so people that were involved in the LA office they were going to be able to stay on. So what was great story there is Jerry Rubin went down to talk to the president of Honda North America and said, "Hey, here's what's going on." And his first reaction was, "Well, why us? Why are we the ones that are being jettisoned?" And kind of told him the story. And but what the end result was he asked if we're going to form this new agency, will the people stay the same?
Right.
And that was the guarantee that yes, we would all be there still, and it would be the same group of people that had been doing this award-winning work that put Honda on the map at the time. And he agreed, and that's how the agency was formed. So
It's interesting to me that they would feel like they were being jettisoned, that they were the ones being excluded from the big agency, but then really it does always boil down to the people, right? This is a theme that's coming out on these conversations a lot, I think, because buildings mean less and less this year, right? Is that it is all about the people. So it's really just the name on the check is a little different, but the relationship. And look, you look at the record of RPA and Honda, some really significant, incredible, beautiful work. So it's a win-win.
yeah, it really was. It was a win for, I think, all of our clients at the time, and for Honda especially. And we've been a good partner for them, and they've been a great client for us. And
Yeah, back then,
all.
back then, you had California Lottery,
Mhm.
Yokohama Tires, Miller's Outpost, Los Angeles Marathon, Sofitel Hotel, Disney Channel, Fidelity Federal Bank, right? So let's talk a little bit about that. I'm sorry I interrupted you, but I think I cut you off. But you were an art director at the time, right? So what was the feeling going through your mind? Had you already started when the purchase happened and the break apart happened? I mean, what's going through your mind at that moment as a young creative?
Yeah, well, it was a little different time. But yes, I was there. I was working for Needham Harper Worldwide at the time. So I'd been there about a year. And I remember distinctly seeing a little byline in the Wall Street Journal. That's how we got our news, was from newspapers back then. And it was just a couple of words that kind of mentioned that there might have been a rumor that a couple of agencies were thinking of merging. And of course, as a young creative at that point, I was probably like, I better get my book together because who knows where this is going to lead. And that was really all we had to go with until Jerry Rubin called us in, to the main, kind of gathering area that we had in the building at the time, and kind of told us what was going on and the plan for us to spin off. And so at that point, it was a sigh of relief on all 100 of us, especially me, that we were going to be able to stick together, the same group of people with the same clients. And it was good that way. But it was a little unnerving, to hear these rumors, because it's not as what do I want to say? Not, the direct. The communication these days is a little faster and a little more direct. So all those things, well, they're top secret. There are always rumors about these kinds of things. These are Wall Street decisions, and
Yeah, for
that
sure.
kind of stuff has to be kept quiet. But it all worked out.
So talk to me about this. So I'm going to shift gears a little bit back to you. So executive vice president, chief creative officer.
Mhm.
So what is your job day to day? And have you noticed changes in your job over the years, or have they been sort of a seamless progression? So talk a little bit about what you do every day, and then we'll talk a little bit about how your career has shaped. Because this is a very unique opportunity to talk to someone who's been at basically the same agency for, I'd say, all of your career. So talk a little bit about, just start off with, like, what do you do?
Well, these days, I like to think that I'm, just kind of encouraging people to be the best they can be. Be that, creatively, or being a good teammate, understanding our client's business, looking for, when we're developing work, it's all about the end results. The end results are, helping our clients' businesses grow. And so what I try to be is a champion of good work that we all think is going to achieve that. And along with that is bringing the talent in, and I've got great people to help me do this too. Is to find that talent and bring them in and make sure they fit in with the team, and be able to achieve those things. So I spend a lot of my time around that, talking to people, looking at work, but I'm not the guy that that puts his thumbprint on things. I have people that help guide other people, but I encourage those people to help guide. And um, I think that's really it. I think the other part of it is having the reputation or the authority to help help make decisions make decisions for the direction of the agency, but also help our clients make decisions.
Mm.
I think we have a long track record of helping our clients, and they see the consistency of the leadership within the agency, and I think they appreciate that. So I might not speak up often, but what I do, hopefully, people hear what I have to say and take that into consideration as we move things. We're helping big companies make big important decisions in their business, and you need to be that trusted partner to be able to do that. So I kind of see myself in that role these days.
God, you said so much right there. There's a couple things I want to follow up on that. First, obviously, I would assume, given this client list, that you're stuck with these agencies. I'm sorry, that these clients have stuck with you guys and vice versa, because there's a mutual respect, and they listen to you. You understand their problems, right? Have you had a situation where you've had a client that really wasn't as open to sort of being told, or have you found that some clients are really self-aware and some aren't self-aware? Because I remember early on in my career, there were moments when, even in the middle of my career as a ACD or CD, where you can see so clearly what they should do and they don't see it. So talk to me a little bit about the ideal client relationship and how that has sometimes gone wrong.
Well, you said it, Dan. Respect is really at the core of that. And of course, in the past, there's clients that have come and gone. It might not have been a good fit, or it might not have, we might not have seen eye to eye in what the ultimate goals are and how to achieve those goals. But, you know, what we're always talking about is kind of trying to keep a long lasting relationship. I'm a big believer in that. Obviously, I've stayed at the same place for a long time, but having a long-term ability to work with these clients and help them achieve their goals, everything takes time and things change, in the marketplace or, in the world. And we have to, they need us and we need them, of course, but they need us to help them get there. And the more you are a trusted partner, the better off you're going to be. So, those are the kinds of things I'm always kind of thinking about, to help them you know, be the best they can be too,
I think that's, yeah.
as businesses.
Yeah, the reason I like to ask that is that, I spend my day to day with people learning the craft at a school, right? And I think a lot of listeners of this podcast are young in the industry and may not really understand or might not have their head around how critical that relationship is to doing great work, because our students don't have clients. They have a blank piece of paper and everything's a thought exercise. So what would you do without any limitations? And it's not always limitations, is it? Sometimes they can crack open a box that you never would have even noticed. A client can bring you a problem that is just a fertile insight that you never would have even considered. So
Right.
those situations can be incredible. One other thing you said earlier that I thought was really interesting was that you're in a position now where you bring your sort of authority to the picture, but you don't want to put your thumbprint on the work. How is the adjustment just shifting out of being an art director to a creative director when you started supervising juniors or supervising people under you? Um, was it easy for you to stand back and enable them, or did you feel like you wanted to put your sort of spin on the work? Talk a little bit about your adjustment from an art director to a creative director.
Yeah, yeah. No, I never really had a big issue with that. I'm maybe I've got less of an ego, or maybe I'm just I never consider myself the smartest guy in the room. I think it's a team effort, and one of the things that I always think about is, how would I want to be treated in that situation? you work very hard to come up with an idea. You think it's right for various reasons. Now, we can't all see everything. That's why we have supervisors and creative directors to help us see the things that we might not see. And I think, Larry Pasteur, to give him credit, was that way too. It was either, hey, he's not necessarily kind of taking something and just twisting it to make it his own. He's looking at it and saying, this is a good idea for these reasons, and this one might not be a good idea for these other reasons. So I always looked at it when I was in that role to take into account the people's work that they put into it, but give them an understanding of why it might not be right. The same thing goes for talent in general too. Is sometimes people want to have a certain or they might have a certain style or things that they're into, but in reality, that style might not be right for the problem we're trying to solve.
Right.
So, that's the other thing I'm always encouraging is to broaden your view of things. We're problem solvers. That's what our clients are asking us to do, is help them solve problems.
Exactly.
And there's always a different way to solve it. There's never one answer.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's
for anything.
really important distinction. So who do you ultimately answer to, work for? Who do you feel like when you wake up in the morning and you do your job, who is the ultimate sort of authority, or
Well,
who do you
it,
answer to?
yeah, it's our clients. I would say that, unequivocally. But what I want to say as a distinction in that answer is that it's our clients as business entities, not necessarily as the individuals. Of course, we got to deal with that. We got to deal with personal, biases, or what they think is right or not right. But we need to convince them that, hey, through our experience or through data or through research, or that hey, this is a viable solution to your business problem. And so, I mean, ultimately, I'm not the owner of the agency. I'm still working. I still have bosses, just like everybody else. There's always a man we have to answer to. But on the bigger thing, I think it's our clients' businesses, because we're
Yeah.
trying to help them grow.
Yeah, David Lubars was the first, and I think maybe the one that has answered that exact answer when I asked that question. And when you get to that position where you can see the forest from Google World, sort of the Google Earth view, you see, well, wait a second, we're here because we work for this. This is, we're a service industry. I think it is interesting that you said that. Also, there should be another word, right? The word client means two different things in advertising. It's confusing because client is the person you work with, but it's also the company they work for. That's a
Yeah.
weird thing. We have a
Yeah.
meeting with the client today. The client is Joe, is Billy. All right, so
Right. It's
we talked.
funny. I mean, just to riff on that for a second, because we talk a lot about that at the agency, because we talk about us being a people first agency, and if you think about clients and what we do, we're all just people, and we're all just trying to help each other out. So we try to talk about our clients, sorry, as individuals with their real names. Like, okay, who are you meeting with? Who are you talking to them? Who are you talking with, and what were you talking
Right.
what were you talking about? So those kinds of things are important. Semantics are important. So when we talk about clients, we usually are trying to say, hey, this is the big business entity. And then when we're talking about the clients as individuals, we try to call them by name.
Yeah, that's an important distinction. All right, so we said this a couple times. You've been there for a long time. It is extremely unusual in advertising, obviously. So does that say more about you or about RPA? And how have you managed to stay at the same place for
Yeah,
so long?
I think it says a lot about the agency. We've got a lot of people that have been there a long time. Our chief production officer was there before I got there. One of our chief client officers, we have several, was there before I got there. So that there's long-standing continuity there. Um, I think we, as an agency, try to treat people well. I think there's a consistency that is important, a continuity that's important. The fact that you know listen, I'm not down at Honda every day in meetings, but they know that there is someone that has a history, an understanding of their business, of where they've been, where they're going, what they're trying to achieve, how they operate, those kinds of things. I think that's an important distinction that we talk a lot about when we're talking to new clients. Uh,
Stability.
the stability, building a relationship, back to trust. You know,
Have you had
a lot of
moments?
trust.
Have you had moments over the decades where it's like, I really should try some different place, or has the job shifted to feel like different jobs, or both?
Well, that's the thing for me personally. The job has always shifted. It's always something new. There's always either a new client or some new project, or the media landscape has changed so much over the years. So it's always kept me interested, and there's always something new and a new challenge for me personally.
All right. So you've written a piece about emotional intelligence. We're shifting gears a little bit.
Mhm.
Can you talk a little bit about how important emotional intelligence is now, having been through this pandemic and getting out of your own way as a leader, and just sort of being able to understand um, communication on a more sort of granular or personal level?
Yeah, yeah. Well, again, I think it comes down to, kind of putting yourself in other people's shoes. And these days, especially, I really believe that it's a team effort. To achieve the things and the stuff that we do as marketers these days are so complex, and there's so many nuanced parts to it, that you have to have the support of other people around you. And to be able to work well with other people, you have to have an understanding of what they're dealing with, and what an account person has to deal with, or what a research person is finding for you. Those kinds of things. You have to be able to figure out, or at least have an understanding of where they are. And so that's what I try to do, is have an understanding of people's situations and try to help foster that kind of thinking within the agency and within the department. But one thing that we've done, and I might be getting off track here a little bit, but we formed what we call ownership teams. And these ownership teams aren't just creative teams. They're teams that involve account research, you know, production, and trying to get those people to work well together, kind of form a little platoon for different clients. And they're kind of they go into battle together, right? And so the things we talk about are, you know, collaboration, and that support. So when I talk about emotional intelligence, it's also about being able to kind of read people and having an understanding of what their needs and wants are.
Hard now, though, right?
It is. It's more difficult, uh, but at the same time, it's funny because I probably have more check-ins now than I did in person. Uh, Sometimes weekly, sometimes bi-weekly. I'm able to drop in on meetings and just kind of see how things are going and progressing, without having to be like, oh my gosh, the chief is in the room.
Right.
And I think people appreciate that. Like I said, I'm not, uh, you know, everybody has their own style. Some people like to communicate a lot. Some people like to communicate a little. My thing is, I might not communicate as often as maybe other people might, but hopefully when I do, I'm present and I'm really
Yeah.
listening. I like to think that, that's kind of one of my things that I like to say is I think I'm a good listener, and I think I try to understand where people are coming from. And a lot of times listening isn't just hearing the words, it's reading between the lines and trying to understand what the true meaning is, or the true expressions or the true emotions that are coming through when you're talking with people. And I think that goes back to, working with, the individuals that are our clients too. It's the stuff that we talk about sometimes is hard to express. and you have to be able to interpret what the end goal is, not just take into account what they might be solving for in the moment, but take into account what we're trying to achieve together.
Isn't that so much more natural now? The experience I have now of being able to like listen and understand and contextualize conversations and contextualize understand people's motives that they're not even expressing, I think just comes from years of having these conversations and years of having these sort of situations come up that I also have less uh, emotion attached to it. So to me, it's almost like decoding a puzzle at times, and it's actually really fun.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I think that these conversations I've been recording for 14 years have also taught me acutely how to listen, to try to get out of my own effing way, and just kind of let someone go. And if I have to write something down, like if I practiced this my whole life, I think I'd probably have been a happier, more wealthy person. If I just patiently write down things instead of just reacting in the moment, like this one. So you said something about you have these teams that work where across disciplinary teams. My second agency in New York was called Anderson and Lemke, and every account had its own core team. It was the same setup. And the great thing about that was we all felt that we had ownership of that relationship, those problems and those solutions. And it was a really empowering setup. Difficult for juniors, I think. I think it's something that's probably better for people with, a little time under their belt to kind of come in and do those. But that was it worked really well.
Yeah, empowerment is a big thing. I think giving people the responsibility to have that ownership is important, and I think that's why we ended up with the ownership teams. It's gone through different names, core teams, whatever. But the idea of an ownership team is important. But
Exactly.
A big part of that, at least the goal, is that you have a full range of people. When I say range, experience. So we have juniors, mid-levels, ACDs, creative directors, group creative directors, but they are part of those ownership teams depending on the number of clients and the amount of work. But in each one, we have that kind of depth of experience. And so, the goal is for those people to work together to encourage the juniors, to give them opportunities to expand. So usually what happens is assignments come in, and if they're, like I said, these days they're complicated. A campaign has so many bits and pieces and moving parts that you need a lot of people to pull it off. And if we go in it with the right attitude and the support for each other, those people, they get the experience of working on it, but they also have the opportunity to come up with the main idea we might hook everything onto. So it works out great, and I think it's playing well with clients and new business, and that kind of thing. Telling our story to new business prospects is half the battle, and this gives us something to really talk about and show how successful it's been for our longstanding clients.
Yeah, that's great. So the agency size is what, around 600?
Yeah. These days it fluctuates. Before pandemic, we were even a little larger, but things come and go. But yeah, it's a pretty big place.
Cool. All right. So how do you define success for yourself and for the agency? Like, what does success look like?
Well, I think it's back to our clients' success. If our clients are succeeding, we're succeeding, and that's the short answer. Within that, what I truly believe is if we're solving the business problems and we're using creativity to do that, then we'll have great success, and we'll have long-standing relationships with these folks,
Yep.
and these companies. So I, I always, from the beginning, I've always thought this, which is solve the problem with creativity, right? And everything else will come. The awards will come, the recognition will come, hopefully the financial gains will come too.
For sure. I'm getting homesick right now hearing that siren. I miss New York. Um, All right, shifting gears. I think we have just a couple more questions. So if you were to teach a class or run a seminar for young creatives, people about to come into the industry, what's the one thing you would want them to learn? Like what do you think is important for them to know coming out of school now or in school now?
Um, yeah, that's good. I really think it's an understanding of other things. Like we yes, you have to know your craft and understand how things are built. But I really believe we're problem solving, and so you're problem solving in a business world. You're problem solving in a communication world, and so having an understanding of how things beyond your world operate, I think is most important. So
You
I
mean the culture or do you mean media? Like what do you mean?
I mean kind of the business side of
Okay.
things
Mhm.
is kind of what I'm leaning into. But when I say that, I also you also have to have an understanding of how that fits into the culture, to the communication landscape, to your customer. So um, I guess what I'm saying is like don't just get caught up in your own world of what you're good at, but think about the bigger problem you're trying to solve. And ultimately, if you're going to put it into one word, it's the business side of things.
Right. It's like if you're working on Honda, I just saw an article on one of my feeds that talked about this new advanced uh, battery storage technology or whatever, like
Mhm.
geeking out in the category. Like
Yeah,
it's not about being a writer and art director. It's about like going deep into like the world that your clients live in, reading their
exactly.
trade magazines and those kind of things, just to be articulate as a partner to them.
Hmm. Yeah,
That's
I think it's super important, and I've always been kind of a research junkie, and maybe that's why I've been able to. Even in the old days, it would be like, hey, I'm going to be gone for half a day here because I need to get to the library,
right, right.
or I need to start subscribing to these other magazines. Now you've got the whole world at your fingertips. All the information that you can find is right there, right here. So it makes it a lot easier that way, but it also can you can go down rabbit holes. But having an understanding of all that stuff, I think, is really important.
Well, caring about it, like it's a lot easier. I mean, all that information is one tab next to much cooler stuff. So, I mean,
Yeah,
you got to
yeah,
think of that as cool stuff.
yeah.
All right. So, what personal trait of yours do you think has been your most valuable so far in your career? What is it about you that has been sort of your secret weapon?
Well, we talked about being able to listen.
Yeah.
Um, I think that's a big part of it. Um, I think also, not having an ego. I don't pretend to be the smartest guy in the room. Um, I don't I, I don't need to be. I think I need to have the support and have the trust of people around me, especially as, you know, we talked about age a little bit. The world's moving fast and there's a whole, generation or two that are thinking about things differently or um, taking in things differently, how they consume stuff, where they are, where they're finding their entertainment, how they want to be entertained, what that entertainment looks like. And so I have to lean on other people for that. I only have so much vision. I need a broader vision and I have trust in the people that are part of the team to figure that stuff out, and I think that's a big part of it too.
You're looking for
Uh,
a diversity of vision too. It's like
yes,
everyone has a narrow field of vision, right? So
right,
the more diverse people that around you are, the better. I think that's
exactly.
really, really interesting. Yeah, you remind me a lot of another guy that was on the podcast, Dan Wyden, who the thing that I think a lack of ego does is it creates the space for people to share their truth,
Yeah,
present a stupid idea.
yeah,
Um, and I work really hard, try to encourage people to present stupid ideas because I think there's a false value on accuracy and correctness in the younger generation. And I think that it's really important to create a space where people can be messy. That's my own commentary on that.
No, I'm a believer in that too. I think at this stage where I am and within the agency, I think people feel like, for me personally, they need to bring it to me in more of a complete form, which is fine. But what I try to do is encourage everybody to, the creative directors, to, have early check-ins and have like one thing I try to encourage is not having presentations, but have check-ins. So if you're a creative director and you've got to get something, developed to a point to get to a client at a certain date, instead of having, hey, you're going to have this presentation, just have four check-ins, no matter where you are in the process. So one team might be, hey, we're really far along and we got scripts and storyboards and all this stuff. And another team might just have a few loose ideas, but those loose ideas might lead to something that is encouraging. And so having that kind of cadence to the work is something that I encourage. Although, people, and it goes back to early art school days, is like, well, I don't want anybody to see it until it's, to my liking. And so you still run into that, but encouraging the witnessing of, or being able to see ideas in their infancy, I think is important. And
for sure.
Trying to foster that.
For sure. So knowing what you know now, if you could go back in time to the day that you graduated and walked out of college for creative studies, what would you whisper in young Joe's ear?
That's a good one. I think maybe having an understanding of business. It's funny. I remember when I think I first became a creative director. I was just talking to my dad, who was like a business consultant and ran a couple of companies, and he goes, "Well, maybe you should think about getting your MBA." I'm like, no, what are you talking about? But in hindsight, I think that was probably pretty good advice. So, not that I have an MBA, but I think about those things a lot, and I read about that kind of stuff. Harvard Business Review or whatever, because at the root of it are people, and what you're trying to do is motivate people, and what you're trying to do is get people to be the best they can be. And I guess having an understanding of
context
and how business works, and you can apply that to so many things, as far as solving problems creatively for our clients, but also being able to solve problems within the organization itself.
Oh, interesting.
Which is something that as you grow through within an agency, you're asked to manage people, you're asked to encourage people, you're asked to be critical of ideas and people. And so having an understanding of how business works is really having an understanding of how people operate. I would maybe whisper that. The other thing I might say is debate. Having the skills to understand your own ideas and being able to defend or talk about why those ideas are worthy, I think is important. And I always think that, like, I never really enjoyed debate, but in hindsight, that might be another thing I would encourage people to think about. Bringing your ideas forward with a logic and not getting defensive, I think is an important trait.
Well, the great thing about debate is that you have to strategize by figuring out what the other side's going to say, which is it is a tool for learning empathy, I suppose.
Yeah, absolutely.
So thank you so much. I have a couple last question that just out of my own curiosity that has nothing to do with advertising, because one other listener, if there are any other listeners, is thinking the same thing. So where in the Midwest did you grow up?
I grew up in Detroit, or just outside Detroit.
Okay, I saw you had some flat A's there, so I couldn't figure if it was Cleveland or upstate New York or Detroit.
Yeah.
So Detroit.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, Detroit, and but I don't know. I still get that,
No, it's still there.
recognize the Midwest accent, but I've been in California for 30 years, so maybe it's evened out a little bit.
Maybe. And I want to thank Laura Montenegro for introducing us. I appreciate her staying on top of me because I don't have a producer. I need one. She has become my de facto producer for this conversation. So thank you, Laura, for that.
That's great. No, yeah, she's great. She's been a big help to me too, to make sure she keeps me on task for these kinds of things.
Yeah, that's awesome. So thank you so much again. Listeners, I'm not going to go through all the links and stuff, but I am on Instagram at DGMS Podcast, where I always post pictures of these conversations right after the show. So check out Instagram and Spotify. If you're listening to this on the regular feed, this is also on Spotify. You can subscribe, follow us on Spotify. So thank you for that. And thanks again so much, Joe. I really appreciate it. Great conversation. Any final words of wisdom for our listeners? I'll put you on the spot.
Well, be yourself and try to put yourself in other people's shoes. Maybe. How about that?
Perfect. Excellent. Thank you so much. Listeners, we'll see you again soon. Bye.
Bye. Thanks, Dan.